What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with a quick Destiny 2 news update with a few light updates from Bungie and some other news for the week. So initially, Bungie clarified changes that they've made in recent updates. There's also confirmation that they're looking into certain hardware cheats. They talk about missing weapons, and we get info that suggests player numbers are at an all-time high. But on top of that, Bungie may have confirmed a recent leak as potentially true in relation to future weapon changes. And finally, we get a brief glimpse at some Guardian Games rewards for 2023. So a few things to talk about in the video today. And as always guys, I hope you enjoy this one. If you do, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. But otherwise, let's get into it. And so initially, Bungie clarify a change that they made last week in one of the hotfixes. And they say there's a small mix-up that we want to address, and here are the correct changes happening with commendation score requirements, with the new scores following hotfix 7007. So for rank 7, 200 commendations are required, which is down from 460. For rank 8, it'll be 477, which was previously 790, and rank 9 is 910, down from 1290. I believe those figures are slightly different to what was initially posted in the patch notes, so just bear those in mind, but they should be represented in the game properly. Up next though, we did mention this yesterday in the April update video, but Bungie have said a fix to interact with the evidence board and allow players to obtain Throne World exotic glaives will go live in the mid-season update. So there's been quite a long-running issue with access to some of that quest stuff. But Bungie encourage players that the interaction will be available once the mid-season update drops. A few people have asked when that April update will be. Of course, it does also include a lot of weapon changes. And Bungie haven't given an exact date, but the middle of the season is roughly sometime in mid-April. So I'd say from the middle towards the back end of April is probably when we can expect to see that update go live. But as always, I will keep you posted when Bungie give more details. Next though, there's been a lot of conversation about the use of Zim or Cronus devices in Destiny 2. And these allow different types of devices, or those with enhancements, to be used in the game. And a few other major titles have recently made ways to ban these devices. And in February, Bungie said to The Verge that this is something they're currently investigating. So obviously not much of a confirmation of anything happening just yet, but they have at least said they are looking into the use of disallowed devices in the game. And hopefully we'll get an update on that soon. In other news though, Merzats on Reddit pointed out that Destiny 2 has just had its best month of player numbers since Shadowkeep went free to play. And so they say that average players in March was only beaten by Shadowkeep, which of course did release free to play content for the game. And on top of that, player numbers have actually been higher than they were during Witch Queen. And the game had a peak of 139,000 players in a 24-hour period, 30 days after the launch of Lightfall, which is actually higher than the total number of players left after 20 days in Witch Queen. We could probably put this down to, generally, the franchise growing over time, much in the same way that Witch Queen had beaten other expansions in terms of player numbers, but also the general hype around Lightfall before it came out. And it's interesting because there have been a lot of complaints about content in Lightfall and some glaring issues in the game, but alongside that, the game has actually had some of its highest player numbers ever recorded, so something to bear in mind right there. And definitely something that Bungie will be paying close attention to, as there is a huge opportunity to continue to grow the franchise, but obviously season content in the next year, and especially the final Shape expansion, are going to be incredibly important moments. And it's safe to say that players expect Bungie to correct some of the issues that we've seen in the game, and in the content in Lightfall, but give us your thoughts on that down below. And it's pretty significant that Destiny has got some of its most players ever active in the game, almost 10 years into the franchise at this point. So share your thoughts on that in the comment section. Something to mention right here that's interesting, but lots of players discuss the fact that we could see the Kvostov auto rifle in various cutscenes and screens during Lightfall content. And Bungie have now clarified why this happened. So in a lot of cutscenes, players are visible holding weaponry, and Bungie found that there was an issue where certain weapons wouldn't necessarily fit into particular screens, so bigger weapons like glaives or swords, for example. And so for particular cutscenes in the game, they decided to add a default weapon, and they chose Kvostov because of course it's the first weapon that every player receives in the game. So it was essentially a solution to a problem where some weapons wouldn't fit on screen or would just look weird, and so Bungie opted to add a default weapon in the form of Kvostov. And so kind of a confirmation right there that there's nothing more to the fact that Kvostov is visible in those cutscenes. They also say something else they started doing in Lightfall is respecting the player's choice of helmet or no helmet in real-time cutscenes. But they add in Season 20 cinematics, sometimes that decision wasn't represented. So from Season 21 onward, this will be consistent. So a couple of interesting insights about that right there. Something else that was interesting in the last TWAB though, related to updates in Season 21. Bungie have said that they have plans to adjust more than a dozen exotic weapons, and that includes Graviton Lance and Salvation's Grip. But there's an interesting correlation to a supposed leak that came out a couple of weeks before this twab that suggested Salvation's Grip and Graviton Lance, as well as a bunch of other weapons, are going to see some pretty big reworks next season. So for Salvation's Grip, the leak said it'll get charged shot from 6 crystals, an uncharged shot will shoot a normal grenade that shatters crystals. Then for Graviton Lance, it said that it'll increase rate of fire to match Revision 0-2 burst, with the difference in damage between the 2 bullets being reduced. And we spoke about some of these changes in a different video. There are a whole bunch of others for exotic armor pieces as well as weapons. But it's interesting that both of those weapons were mentioned in the leak, and then Bungie later hinted that they are going to be updated next season, which of course potentially confirms that that leak could be true. So just something interesting to think about, and I'll link the video down below where we go over all of those supposed changes. But whether they absolutely turn out to be correct, we will simply have to wait and see. Something to add on that note though, related to some of the weapon changes, including auto rifles, pulse rifles, hand cannons, and scout rifles. They'll be increasing the amount of damage that those weapons do to red and orange bar enemies in the game. And Bungie on Twitter confirmed that this will apply to exotic primaries as well. But if you want a full breakdown of April update changes, I'll link my video from yesterday down below. The final thing to touch on right here though, are some bits of upcoming content for Guardian games this year. So on Twitter, Bungie Leaks shared various bits of armor ornaments for Guardian games in 2023, and Elliot on Twitter posted some better renders of them. So of course this isn't exactly what they'll look like in game, but we can see very basic representations of the Hunter armor right here, and then the Titan armor and all of the base colors on these armor pieces represent the class colors from the event. Finally, there is also the Warlock here as well. It'll be cool to see exactly how they appear in the game, but Bungie Leaks shared a better look at the class items as well. A couple of them are actually pretty cool. So the Hunter gets this very long cloak, and there is the Hunter snake on the bottom right there. There's also the Warlock bond, which doesn't give us much of a look at the detail on it. But then the one for the Titan has some of that ornamentation in kind of 3D right there, which is cool. On top of that, Bungie Leaks on Twitter have said that there will be an upcoming extra Guardian Games weapon in the form of an Omolon scout rifle. We don't know any extra details on this weapon yet, but it looks like this year we'll have a second weapon joining the title for the Guardian Games event. And according to Today in Destiny with the Eververse rotation, Guardian Games will go live on the 2nd of May. There'll be a bunch of new Eververse items as well as stuff reappearing from previous years, so it'll be interesting to see if Bungie mix up the event for this year, and perhaps we'll get a few details about that in 2 or 3 weeks' time. But for today, guys, that's everything we have to speak about. And so as always, I hope the video has been interesting, and if it has, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. Also, feel free to get subscribed to the channel, and I'll keep you posted with everything related to the game. But otherwise, as always, thank you for tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.